Hello and welcome to First Flight, a Star Trek Enterprise rewatch podcast where we are watching and discussing each episode of Enterprise in succession.
First Flight is a proud member of the Tricorder Transmissions Network.
This is Commander Tucker of Enterprise. We've got some information you're going to want to hear.
Welcome, Enterprise fans. I'm your co-host, Abby.
And I'm your co-host, Chris.
And tonight we are discussing Extinction, the third episode of Season 3. Extinction was written by Andre Bormanis and was directed by LeVar Burton. Yay, love him. It aired on September 24th, 2003. But before we begin our discussion, we need to issue, as always, a read alert.
Tactical alert. All hands to stations.
We might end up talking about any part of the series at any time, so you have been warned. And now, for a summary of this episode, it's time for the Captain's Log. I don't envy this one this week. Chris, let's go.
Captain Starlog Supplemental.
Please. What is a poem?
Poetry is an art form that uses words put together in new and unexpected ways, sometimes in rhyme.
Okay, here we go. My haiku for Extinction. Flamethrowers ignite. Archer preserves race. Epidemic ends.
Not bad. It's a lot of multisyllabic words in there.
Yeah, and I was struggling to fit in the epidemic idea because that did hit in this episode differently than the last time I watched it.
Yes.
Because we went through a pandemic and quarantine. Whenever the word quarantine comes up now, it's like it has a different response from me. So
yeah,
how to get it.
That is an interesting thing to think about how, and we've said this before about other episodes too. When you are watching it now, post some of the events of the world, it does reframe things differently, and that's a nice point.
Yeah.
Glad you got that in the haiku. All right, so there's a lot more to talk about with this, so it's time to deploy our subspace amplifiers and get into the episode. We'll start with a quick chat about the cold open, and then we'll head into our pros and decons section. Each of us will share 3 of our favorite parts of the episode, and then, if there are things that don't gel with us, we'll have a discussion on decons from the episode. You might hear a dog bark in this discussion if somebody's Porthos Pick is mentioned, but we will still discuss them more later on.
Okay, let's get into this episode. And as always, we start with the cold open. Abby, what are your thoughts on how this episode starts?
Well, we call it a cold open, but there's an awful lot of flames in this one, so maybe it's more of a hot open.
Yeah.
Yeah, that it's kind of brutal. Like this one, we don't see any of our crew, which is kind of okay because this is pretty much murder. Or
Yeah.
Right, first thing, and that's okay. I mean, how many murder mysteries start off with the murder or whatever, right? But it is brutal. This is not, we're going to inject you with something and then you go to sleep. This is no, you are getting flamed alive, and you see it from both angles and points of view, and that's intense. But I do have to say, what I noticed first in this, no surprise to anybody, is the costumes. Like, I like the EV suits. I like the transformed alien and what he's wearing. And there were some interesting costumes there. And that might come back later on in my discussion. So, as brutal as this was, little old costume nerd me is going, ooh, look at that cool jacket. So there's some interesting moments in this cold open. What do you think?
Yeah, it definitely pulls you in. You're like, what is going on?
Yeah.
How is this connected to the Xindi? What's Enterprise's role in this? Who are these guys? Why are they burning this guy alive? We don't get to see flamethrowers on Star Trek besides the ones installed on the Discovery Bridge. So
yeah, the occasional giant flamethrowers. It happens.
It's not occasional.
Okay, the semi-regular flamethrowers on the
There
bridge.
you go.
It happens.
It's flame fountains back there. But
I like that flame fountain.
Yeah. Throw a penny in. So in
Or
my cold open, oh yeah, that's it. It's because the Discovery crew is so laid back. They're just like, you know what? I need a s'more right now. I just need a s'more.
And they're making all the variations, like adding the peanut butter, adding the banana, adding the like Rolo instead of the Hershey bar.
So Rue takes kelp and wraps it around his. Yeah.
Oh
it's
my God,
Yeah.
yes.
Yep.
Wait, is it wrapped around the whole s'more or
The whole
just the
s'more.
marshmallow?
The whole s'more. Yeah.
Ooh,
It's
but
like
if
in this
he wrapped
kelp
it
pocket.
like a hot
becomes
pocket.
crispy like kale when you like bake kale.
See, that's what I was thinking. If he did it around the marshmallow, it would be crispy around like the gooey marshmallow. So, okay, this is completely theoretical. Anyways, back to the hot open.
Guys, we just have to pause right here. This is not in the script. We are going to do our best to stay on topic with Extinction.
Yep.
Going forward, here we go.
Okay.
My note for this episode is one word: flamethrowers. It was cool.
There you go.
That was cool. So that makes it the cold open because it was pretty cool.
All right, we'll go for that. Maybe it's tepid because it's the hot flamethrower and the cold open.
Okay, I'll take that.
All right.
That fits with the episode more.
Okay. On that note, let's jump into some pros.
Let's do it.
Okay, so I'm going to start us off tonight, and as you might have guessed, we have some feelings about this episode, but there are many things in here that I had not noticed and appreciated before I went back and did all my rewatches for this. And one of the first things that I want to point out is our crew that is not on the planet. And I really liked that in this episode, we have everybody getting something to do. We talk about that a lot. This one has everybody in it. I mean, first of all, Phlox is flippin' brilliant. Again, as always, like the things he does, the things he figures out, the speed in which he creates, an antigen. This is amazing. That man deserves every science medal that there is out there, because throughout this episode, over and over again, we see Phlox being brilliant. We also see Travis, who we have lamented the past few episodes, has really not had that much to do. He's got a lot more to do in this one. He even gets to sit in the big chair. And the most Travis moment for me was when he gets to get in the big chair, but then as soon as it's time for him to do some complex flying, he's out of that chair and back at his station, ready to be the pilot, like instantly. And it was just so Travis. He's like, yeah, I guess I could wait for you to come actually up here and sit down, but I'm just going to get ready to fly the ship. And that was such a tiny little thing, but he was there. He had stuff to do. He had lines. He had purpose. He had momentum in this one. And Trip has a great moment. He is not angry Trip in this one. He is competent, focused leader Trip. And the three of them back on the ship make this awesome little combo of figuring out, what are we going to do? How are we going to do it? What are we going to do with these aliens that are now a factor? How do we make this the best we can and get all our people back? And I really like seeing the three of them work together, because that's not a combination we see all the time. So that was super nice. And then we have our other group down on the planet, and you know what? They have their story, but I really, really liked seeing the two stories balance each other, and especially the men back on the ship just making it all work.
Well, let's fire those defiant torpedoes.
Hey!
Because my first pick is the Trip Travis Phlox scene, and how they are just commanding everything on the ship, like you said, but especially Trip and Travis in command. But I do have to pause and say, when you said something about Phlox is flippin' Austin or flippin' Phlox, and I just heard in my head, flippin' Phlox. Not Duras, flippin' Phlox. It's a good
happy
thing.
one.
Flippin' Phlox. Yeah.
I like it. I like that we have another one going.
Yes, I don't know if it'll catch on the same way because there's no like fun thing like that.
That is what makes it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But totally agree. Everything that you said, everyone knows I love when Trip is in command. I really like Travis in the captaincy. He looks perfect there. Yeah. If we could get Anthony Montgomery to come back now as an older man, leading a ship, that would be incredible.
That would be amazing.
Right?
And check in with his good friend Hoshi, who's running some like alien linguistics outpost somewhere, doing amazing like cutting edge communication research or something.
Please. Yeah. Yeah.
That
Yeah.
would be
I'm
amazing.
for it. She's helping Denobulans learn about whistle speak.
There we go. There we go. More on that later, good Carrot Crew. If you are also Discovery fans, stay tuned later on. We've got something cool coming up for you. So we definitely agreed on that first one. We got ourselves right in line with the fact that it's so nice to see everybody doing something. And yet I love the little powwows. I love how they play off each other. And I was thinking too, as you were talking about the scene with all three of them, you can see that these are people who've been working with each other for a while.
Yes.
There's that implicit trust, that natural back and forth. The discussion really flows. They scaffold each other, and they're all okay with, layering ideas and thoughts and courses of action on top of each other. Like, this is a group effort with a group that is used to working together now, and it's really nice.
Yeah, and going back to that scene, I really love this idea that Phlox brings out, that the expanse, like the laws of physics are unpredictable in the expanse, so maybe the laws of biochemistry are on this world. That's fun. And that also makes you think, like, what else are we going to discover in the expanse?
Yeah. Maybe we're all going to grow tails one episode, if the laws of actual biochemistry are different.
Or turn into bunnies.
I prefer not to poof into a bunny.
I set you up for that, and I'm grateful you caught the ball.
Oh, yeah. So, and you know what? I have to say, this whole episode, while we're talking about this, the biology being able to be changed, the word mutagen is cool. Like, I just, every time they said it, because you hear it, the word mutate in different forms, but mutagen just is a cool word. And like, I really enjoyed hearing that throughout this episode, because I'm just like, God, sometimes words are just fun, and that's just a fun word.
Yes, it is. It is just fun to say. It's just pleasing. And I'm looking for where it comes from. Doing my Armin Shimmerman right now.
Yeah, if you aren't listening to the Delta Flyers reviewing the DS9 now with Armin Shimmerman and Terry Farrell, all of you Carrot Crew listeners, if you love DS9, go listen. It's amazing. And they add great flavors to Robbie and Garrett's chats. And Armin looks up how words are, where they came from, the origins of words, because he's amazing. So go listen if you haven't. It's worth it.
Okay, so mutagen comes from the 1940s. It's a combination of mutation, obviously, and gen.
Right.
And gen means to a combining form, right? So oxygen, denoting a substance that produces something. Cultigen,
pathogen.
pathogen, yeah. And then, of course, that's related to genes and genetics. So cool. All right, sorry for the word corner.
No, I'm not sorry for it at all. I think vocabulary is important.
Yes. All right, now that we're done with our structural analysis of that word, let's move into your second pro.
Okay, so I have to say that the second thing I wanted to highlight here, the very first word, and I did this in like an orangey color, just says peaches. Because I like the fact that Trip is bringing food to T'Pol again. Like he got her to eat pecan pie before. He's always encouraged her, like different teas, little things here and there. Of course, I'm going to point out the food, but the peaches are a plot point, and that's kind of cool. And it's one of those moments where you see Trip being brilliant too, when he runs back later through the corridor and he's trying to get to the peaches. I guess T'Pol has given him the lock code to her door, because he just goes right in, like he hits the button, goes right in, and I would assume she locks her door. But either way, that's not the point of this. I enjoyed that he brought them to her. I enjoyed that we know chefs keep special things in stasis for people on the ship. Like that, of course, that would make sense. Like somebody's mom makes them a birthday cake when they're home, and they put it in stasis so they could have it on their birthday. The Georgia peaches in season. I'm thinking right now, wild ramps are big around here, and they're only around for like maybe 2 weeks. Like you could have those in stasis and pull them out in fall, and it would taste like spring. Like this is me nerding out on food, but I like that idea. And I like the idea that somewhere on Enterprise, there's like a locker room full of like little secret compartments, like a bank vault, right? Of everybody's saved stasis food. And it
Mhm.
also makes so much more sense how Chef can do the menus that he does throughout
Yeah.
Enterprise. Now that you realize that he's got, whenever he gets supplies, he can put them in stasis. Like, that's super cool. It made me think a lot about that. And I like that T'Pol is, she's like, I wouldn't usually eat this late, but she does it for Trip. Like, the food is just nice. And it's nice to see that is still a through line between them and as Enterprise as a whole. Food is important in Enterprise. These peaches are a crucial plot point. And you know what? It makes the neural pressure scene feel less icky because they come in and they have a moment as people together, as
Sure.
friends together. They
Mhm.
have that connection. So when they do get into the point where he takes off his shirt and the hands are cold and all that, it doesn't feel as awkward, as forced.
Mm.
Maybe because we the pajamas stay on to Paul this time, but I liked, that's the part of the neural pressure that I like. That's the part of this relationship this season that really gets me. I like that you see them growing together as people, and that those moments of intimacy that aren't physical. Like, he knew he had to owe her an apology. He brought her something he knew she'd like. It's food.
Mhm.
It's just such a connective moment in there. And I liked that. And I also have to call out in this scene, I don't know if this was intentional or lighting or whatnot, but the way that you can see to Paul's ears in this, it looks like she has green blood in them instead of red blood like we do. And I don't know if that was
Oh.
somebody painting it. I don't know if that's new this season. I'm going to start looking for it more now. But it's just that little like under tint, and I think it's because it's more shadowy in there, but I could really see, I'm like, you know what, that absolutely looks like somebody who has green blood right there in those ear tips. It was a cool little detail.
Wow. I did not notice that.
And well, we watch differently. We've talked about this. I spend one watching things that are not important to the picture.
You're totally right. I have a Trek Core image up right now,
Yeah.
and there's some green, but is it
And
from
once you
lighting
see
from
it, you can't
somewhere
unsee
or
it. I don't know, but I
yeah.
really like it.
But yeah, if it's lighting, there's nothing in the room putting off green light, so it has to be some kind of makeup application. Just very
Well, I'm gonna say, since they changed her hair and her eyebrows as like
hmm
part of the redesign, maybe they tweaked the ear painting, the ear
hmm
prosthetic, like however they do that. But it was noticeably cool this time for me.
Yeah, I like that. Very cool. Yeah, that neuropressure scene didn't bother me as much as the last one we looked at. Because like you said, there's a little more of a friendship going on.
Mhm.
No one's trying to dupe Trip into doing this.
Right.
And Georgia Peach for the Florida guy, like it had to be a peach. It couldn't have been a Florida orange because you wouldn't
No.
just bite into it. Although that would be a funny little moment, like, no, Paul.
You gotta peel it.
Yeah.
It's a little bitter.
But Vulcans do not waste any part of the fruit. I could see a
Oh,
response like that. But no, you made me think that do, we haven't seen a dining room scene in a while, like in the captain's mess
yeah.
between the three.
I'm trying to think when the next time we do is.
I think there's some time. I don't think it's
Yeah.
as prevalent now, and it wasn't as prevalent in the second half of season two as well. So I didn't clock that until you talked about food
Hmm.
here being important. But even if we're not doing the captain's mess, we're still doing the mess hall. We're doing this Georgia Peach at night scene, all that kind
Yep.
of stuff. So Enterprise is still keeping it going.
Thank you, Dorothy Duder, 1,000 times over for being the best food stylist on Trek.
Absolutely. So I'm gonna count food in that pick for you.
Yes, 100%.
All right, we ready for my pick?
I am.
Okay, so it does involve costumes. So I guess I'll put that in my thing. Yeah, I'm picking costumes. But it's the whole
Yay.
scene that involves the costumes. It's the rescue scene when they beam down in the EV suits. I like it. It's just good and fun use of the Makos. I guess I'll count Makos here too. It's just a good action sequence. And like we said in the Xindi and Anomaly, the action this season is top notch and quite modern. I think the infusion of the Makos is really helping the action overall for everyone involved. So I just call it that great action scene. It was a fun moment.
That is a really fun scene, and I think it's really smart because you see the planning for it up on the ship, and then you see
Yep.
them come down and actually do it, and it's really nice storytelling there. And I love to Paul's little throwaway line, like, I thought you said you would never use the transporter again, and Trip's like, yeah, tell me about it, I wish I didn't have to. Like, but that was part of they had to use it, they planned for
Yep.
that, and it was just neat, and it was another one of those tiny little character beat moments there. And I know they threw that in because somebody out there back in 2003 was going to be like, well, Trip said he wasn't going to use the transporter on people and blah blah blah, and this was just for that. That was to just be like, yep, we know, and we're calling it out and noticing it and moving on. Like, it was
Yep.
just, that was a really nice moment. And I like, again, the Makos. They're there to do what they were brought for, and they do it well. And it's always, the action is so cool. Like, they picked good actors who can do the stunt work really well. And I'm props to all the stunt people that are coming in this season too, because they really had their work cut out for them, and it holds up.
Definitely. It's one of the more entertaining moments in this episode. So I was grateful for that action beat.
Yeah.
All right. What's your third, bro?
All right, so I want to talk about Tret, the alien captain, and we don't actually ever know what these aliens are. I did some deep dive research going,
Me
what
too.
are these? Nope. And he gets a name, so Tret, which is, I think, is kind of a cool name. But first of all, let's talk costumes for a second here, because he has a really cool looking costume, but again, it's squeaky. Like, I was like, wow, I don't know what is up with Enterprise and like the squeaky leather on the like semi bad guys, but
Hmm.
it seems to be a theme I've been noticing. That's pretty cool. And so his costume, it's got those beautiful colors. It looks like it's both leather and metallic, but it also looks really functional. And like, when you see him moving in it, I'm like, for as much as it squeaks, this is a guy who I think could drop down and do what had to be done in this
Yes.
moment right here. Like, it was amazing. And I appreciated how he played things seriously, but with that kind of undertone of both duty and a little bit of fear. Like, he's
Hmm.
scared of this, and that's what's driving him. And I think that resonated with Trip, and they had that little moment finally at the end where he's like, I told you we just needed a little bit more time. And you could see on his face at that moment, he just like, okay, it's like they take a breath. And I think recognized driven fear
Hmm.
between those two men in this episode. And I also wanted to call out, and this is not important, but something that made me think, he has a nose of the week, but it's cool because it's kind of also a forehead and hairline of the week. Like, he's got that
Mm.
ridge that goes from the tip of his nose all the way up, but it doesn't stop at his hairline like a lot of the makeup does. It kind of
Hmm.
goes in for what, an inch and a half, 2 inches, and his
Hmm.
hair
Hmm.
is off on either side. And he's got, once I noticed that, and I'm like, you know what, that is cool. Like, because we've seen, double tentacled alien heads and ridges and all this, but this one is just really subtle. And I noticed then that they gave him a really angular haircut around like the rest of his
Hmm.
forehead and stuff
Hmm.
that just kind of mirrored that center line. And I just thought that was really subtle, but really precise and beautiful. And I felt like it went with the character design and the costume design. So for an alien race that doesn't even get named, they put a lot of effort and thought into what they looked like, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, they almost look like, I think, the Brunali.
Yeah, a little bit.
Hmm. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I like this guy a lot, so much so that this is my third pick as well.
Oh, look at us. We're in alignment today.
Yeah, I loved Tret, and I was the whole time like, who is this actor? I know this actor. Where is he from? And of course, he's from Stargate SG-1. He plays
Mm-hmm.
Captain or Lieutenant and Captain Connor in The First Commandment and Spirits. And then he's also, which is probably where I know him most from, he's Curtis Manning in 24.
Oh,
45 episodes of 24. So a big player there. That's where I knew him from. And the
That
whole
makes sense now. The voice, I can
Mhm.
hear it now that you say that. Yeah.
Speaking of the voice, he also plays the Green Lantern in many like DC animated things too.
Huh.
So his voice is in our culture too, not just his full physical performance. So
His
th
presence. Yeah.
he had a
Cool.
good presence. That's why I think we're drawn to him because
Yeah.
he's sympathetic. You see that he is just coming from this desperate
Hmm.
civilization trying to
Hmm.
survive. And we have lived through a moment of desperation when a pandemic took over our world, and we're like, what is the future going to be?
Yeah.
Fortunately, we've kind of come out of it in many ways, not in all ways, but many ways. Um, Fortunately, hopefully.
Yeah, but that kind of stuff changes you.
It does. It does change your perspective on the world and how you live. I we It's not unusual to see a mask now. Like
Hmm.
pre-pandemic, mask, what are you doing? Now it's like, oh, you got a cold? You can put a mask on. You don't have
Hmm.
to, you can. Like there's not the stigma as much anymore. So it's just interesting what this character does for us in today that had no effect on the viewers or the creators when this was made.
Yeah, that it is really interesting. And I I like going back to older Trek now and still finding those moments that resonate either the same or completely differently, but still in a really meaningful, important way because
Mhm.
of where we are now. And that speaks to how true and honest these stories are, the good ones, the bad ones, the in-betweens, because there's always something in there that
Well,
resonates with the now.
yeah, and I really like Tret because he's resolute. Like he's gonna
Hmm.
get his job done, but he's
Hmm.
reasonable. Like
Right.
he's like prepared to be bored, and Trip's like, no, but you can come over and talk. And so he does.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well,
Now,
he's just trying to save his people, just like our crew is trying to save their people.
yep,
He
yep,
sees a threat and he's trying to neutralize it for the greater good, no matter what it takes. Right? We've had that conversation between Trip and Archer, so
yeah,
they get each other. Yeah.
they do. And once he realizes, oh, there is a solution here, he's like, I mean, you see it on his face, like, what?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
his whole world will change after
Yep.
this encounter with Starfleet.
Yep.
That is Star Trek right there. Like that's pretty cool. The show doesn't spend a lot of time with that, but that is a really cool outcome of this episode.
Yeah, we've talked about it before in other episodes. This is a moment where things change for a character. And while he's not a major character, this is a moment where things change for him. And those are always powerful to see on screen.
Yeah, and the actor showed us that entire moment for his civilization in one expression. So good job, Curtis. I mean, Roger Cross is the actor who played Curtis Manning and Commander Tret.
Bravo. All right. So, as people may have guessed, we have not talked about one giant part of this episode. So, we may have some decons tonight, things that just didn't gel with us. And I am glad you're going first, Chris. So, start us off. Let's see what you got on your list.
Well, first of all, like it's a pro of a decon. So like I don't like the mutagenic part with the crew on the planet part as much, right?
Hmm.
But the actors did a great job doing what they were told to do. They did it.
Yes.
They did what they were told to do. Eating gross bug things, sniffing people, moving in an alien way, talking like Scott Bakula's voice is very different. He does a
All
really,
three of
really
them.
great
Yeah.
job. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Especially when they're keyed up or excited or
Hmm.
upset. All three of their voices are incredibly good. Plus, I think Scott Bakula has been taking the other two to whatever
Hmm.
his leg day workout is because the amount of squatting,
Yes.
prolonged squatting that they do in this. I mean, we've talked about Archer's strong legs before this, but all three of them, they must have needed massages or
Hmm.
stretches or
Ice
something after.
baths.
Yes, because oh my goodness, I could only imagine like how shaky they must have been after that because it was so angular and
Hmm.
prolonged, really prolonged squatting. My knees hurt just watching them go through that forest.
But their core has to be strong too, because otherwise their
Yeah,
lower back's probably killing them as well.
exactly.
All right, so
Yeah.
my first decon is the entire irrelevance to the Xindi plot, basically. Now, I don't remember.
Come on, the Xindi were there weeks ago or something, right?
Irrelevant. Now, but like we didn't get any clues to the mystery. Now, I don't remember if anything from that shuttle's database that they find plays in some part. So maybe I'm wrong, but in this episode alone, it seems like this is irrelevant to the Xindi plot. So, and my first decon being that made me consider the complaints leveled at Discovery Season 4, the first part of it. People complained, oh, these are just irrelevant to the larger plot. And I didn't care because I thought they were good character stories and good episodes on their own, good standalone Star Trek at the beginning of Season 4. This isn't a good episode, so I don't so I do care that it doesn't have the connective thread to the larger Xindi plot as much. So,
well, with all the talk about filler episodes that's been going on the past 3 weeks or so from our recording date, is this filler?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I would fall on, this is just kind of filler. And again, if something they had learned here, or that vial of virus, or some sort of language, or if Tret and his people had come back later, this would have been worth it. But this is it feels like a leftover idea from last season that got thrown in here to pad it out or extend it. This didn't. You're right. It had nothing to do with the Xindi. Nothing really comes back that's important, and it just leaves you. The past couple episodes have left you wanting more, salivating for next week, ready to go. And this one, you're just like, ugh, really? Oh, okay.
Well, the little Porthos bark right now.
Okay.
Throughout the entire episode, you're just like, why are we watching this? Why is this happen? Why was this the story to tell next? Right? In this kind of season that promises a definite arc, right?
Yeah.
The end of the episode redeems it a little bit for me, not in any connection to, well, it has a little bit of connection to the Xindi, but the end of the episode does redeem it, makes it a little more Star Trek. It's the Star Trek moment. But other than that, it's like, why are we watching this? So anyway, let's go on to the next.
Let's keep going.
Decon, yeah. The Vulcan neuropressure scene is a decon, but not as hard as last time. I think you kind of convinced me of otherwise, so maybe maybe it shouldn't be on my list anymore. I do love the peach reveal as the solution though. So that is fantastic. And I want a peach after I see that scene where she plucks the bite away. It's like, a good peach.
Yep. I know. The juicy ones.
And then the last decon that I'm going to share, because I texted you, I restricted myself to 3, is the CGI of the city just does not hold up in any way. It could have been a really cool scene in the dream sequence and in the actual sequence. It could have been really cool. Like the scale of it, it's huge. It's underground, cavernous, but it's too clean and neat. And that's just a result of being in, the early 2000s CGI. So that's a decon. What about you?
Okay. So I'm going to do a couple. Yeah. I'm going to do a couple silly ones first, like I always do, right? Okay. So when Hoshi and Archer are rescued from the planet, they're all torn up, they're dirty, they're icky, and Phlox takes them to sickbay, gives them the injection or whatever, and then by the time they get up to the bridge to be talking to Tret, they're completely cleaned and in a new uniform. That just feels to me like I don't think they would have changed, and I almost wish they hadn't, because then it would have been. I mean, obviously their faces are still semi-morphed, but I feel they would have. It would have been more proof. Look, we're all disgusting and covered in the swampiness and goo bugs from down there. This is really who we were, and look, we're coming back. And I think that just would have added an element of realism, because it kind of took me out, because they stepped off, and the first time I'm like, when did they change? But that's just me again. And okay, another silly thing. So when they're on the planet and they start to mutate, and T'Pol calls up to the ship and says, "Oh my goodness, we're being mutated. Have a security team come." What? That's not logical. Like
Yeah.
something bad is happening to us down here. It's changing us. Send more people. No,
Yeah.
that's not the right answer. Like, no, tell them what's going on, but you don't want more people coming down and getting mutated. Like, so
Yeah,
that just
definitely not Vulcan as a MFer.
no. I was watching him like maybe T'Pol's gonna logic these guys out of something on the no. So and okay, logical as well. If anyone who goes on this planet, or the majority of people, thank you, Vulcan K cells, get mutated, right? Why is there no warning beacon or, minefield
Mhm.
or something out there? I mean, I know that Tret's aliens are close enough to tell that the other, like the Enterprise and the Xindi and whoever else has landed on the planet. So why don't they hang around just a little bit further out or put some buoys or like stop people before they get there and be like, hey, if you land down here, you're going to turn into these weird mutated clickings, bug eaters. Maybe
Mm.
don't go down on the planet or go down in a hazmat suit. Like, warn people. They seem like decent enough. I mean, they want to save their people. If you don't want this to spread, tell people not to go there.
Yeah. But sometimes when you tell people not to do something, they're even more curious. So maybe they're
Okay.
like, okay, out of the trillions of planets in the universe, let's not draw any attention to this one. But you're right. You're totally right. In the conventions of Star Trek, warning buoy.
Yes. And then if people don't listen, okay, then you can go down and toast them with your flamethrower. But at least try, because maybe, if you show them the proof, like when Saval comes and says, hey, look, this is what happened in the Expanse. Here's our
Yeah.
video cameras. Show people, say, look, this is what's going to happen to you. If you want to go down there, we told you, and, we're going to come fry you. So it just seems like they're causing themselves more opportunity for this virus to spread by not telling people to not go there. And that seems really counterintuitive and like the first easiest thing to do to stop the spread of this mutagen.
Yeah, it does. It
This is
does.
why when I texted you the other day, I'm like, it doesn't even make sense. Okay, so here's my other does it make sense, and then we'll go into my other big thing. Okay, so the Lokek are the people that were on this planet. They built this huge underground city, blah, blah, blah. They developed the mutagen, right?
Mm-hmm.
How did they make that when how they were is what we saw our crew evolve into? Like, the actual description of the Lokek on Memory Alpha says a species from the Delphic expanse in the Milky Way galaxy. Despite being sentient, they were emotionally and physically primal and feral. How did they make this virus?
Hmm.
Like, it just doesn't make sense. This wouldn't be, and if you had enough scientific knowledge and technology and capability to make this virus that would transform not just yourself but other spacefaring species that they're obviously aware of. I mean, they have to know somebody else is out there to do this. I mean, you wouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
So they have at least knowledge of other spacefaring species out there for whatever. Why would they evolve into these creatures that fight over a bug melon? Like, this just doesn't.
So I didn't take it that way. Because throughout the episode, Phlox reveals that they're not fully transformed yet, and they're like, "Oh, if we don't get them soon, it'll be too late." But they're still not fully transformed. So during this transformation process, the more primal, deep-seated behaviors of the species are more presented in the people that are being transformed. But once the transformation completes, perhaps they're restored to, a more higher evolutionary version of this species. Because look, they built cities and everything underground. You know what I
Exactly,
mean? So they
exactly,
had to, and we saw the CGI versions of them walking calmly and peacefully through the city. So what we're
exactly.
seeing is the that our crew going through the evolution, perhaps, of this species towards where they end up. That's how I read it.
All right, well, that makes it maybe a little better. It's still just, it sits funny with me. Like, it just doesn't feel like they match. And
Yeah.
maybe that's because going into my next one, we've seen other de-evolving or morphing stories, right? Like we've seen Genesis from TNG and Identity Crisis, and neither one of those bothers me like this one does. We've seen Favorite Son from Voyager, or Ashes to Ashes with the
Threshold.
Kabali. Threshold, exactly. I mean, we could keep going. This is not an uncommon theme. And this one, I guess I just wish if this species had been so advanced to the point where they could make this virus, that they would have not evolved into something that felt so, it almost felt like a caricature of the story idea. Like they're going to de-evolve into this kind of awkward type alien. And I think part of what it was is after watching this and listening to this on headphones and stuff, I feel like their voices, while they changed the tone of them well, sometimes the accents sounded vaguely like Middle Eastern. And knowing that this was right after 9/11, it felt uncomfortable. Like, and I don't know if that was intentional. I don't know if that is history, hindsight. I don't know. But once I heard that, I was like, yes. And I'm sure that was part directing choice, part actor choice, part just, what can you do that sounds super alien? But when the super aliens sound Middle Eastern, and we're doing this season, which is been said and been preached as kind of a response to 9/11, it felt even less comfortable. Like I did not like that.
Interesting. But these guys are not portrayed as bad guys. Right?
No, that's
they're
true.
really not. And so that's interesting. And
less evolved, I guess.
Well, like I said, they didn't finish the process, the
That's
transformation. True. And do anyone get to finish the process before they're wiped out by flamethrowers? Right? So I definitely hear the accent, and that is really interesting when I'm combining my recent rewatch of Voyager's Nemesis, where the good guys look like bad guys. They look like beasts, right? And these guys, their prosthetics will make them look primitive and beast-like. They have these pulsing neck bubbles, right? And everything like that. It's playing on our perceptions, because I think Nana Visitor said this on the Delta Flyers episode on Duet, that we have heuristics in our brain that help us make quick decisions and judgments, which that's not an uncommon idea to say, but having the word heuristics was really interesting. Our heuristics for this episode kick in, and we see these guys as bad guys and primitive because of their stance, because of the makeup, because of the accent. And if there's a Middle Eastern accent in there too that you're hearing, like all these things are working to create bad guys, but they're not bad guys. It's actually a species that's desperate to continue existing.
Like the humans are.
Well, just like Tret's species, just like the humans, just like the Xindi.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things here a lot of potential for a rich episode about ideas that didn't really get explored on screen, but that's the benefit of our podcast. We get to really dig into it and find something worthwhile from this story, even if we might not want to watch it many more times.
That's interesting to think about. And you're right. This is one of the benefits of the pod, is sitting here and getting to discuss and looking for more and making those deeper connections, or the modern connections. And I think that's interesting too. And I don't even know, like I said, with the vaguely Middle Eastern type accent, I don't know if that was even something that registered then. And maybe it's because of, 20 some years of hindsight. Like you look at how things went since then, and you see these things pop up, and you go, well, that's because of this historical event and this was going on in the world. But you can't know that while you're in it sometimes. So it is interesting. All right, I have one more little musing here. It's not really a decon, hopefully. But so at the very end, Malcolm's talking about his belly is still all upset from, combining everything. Phlox offers him larva, which is hilarious. But then he and Archer have that little moment. And this is the little moment that I feel like was kind of missing from Anomaly last week, where they
Mm.
just had that connection of person to person, not just,
Mhm.
you know, captain to lieutenant. And, you know, how are you doing? And, you know, getting there. And they're both just kind of off. And he says, well, you know, T'Pol and Hoshi are taking the day off. Why don't you? Good. Yes.
Yeah.
Everybody go take a day off and rest. Do they get therapy? Like, this was
Yeah.
like I really hope that there's a counselor or somebody on this ship. I mean, I know they could all talk to Phlox, and they do, and we know he and
Mhm,
Hoshi
mhm.
have that special relationship, but this is a big one. I mean, we saw the CGI shot of like their bones and organs morphing. Like
Yeah.
this one might need some therapy. I mean,
Mm.
connecting to Whistle Speak again in Discovery that we'll talk
Even
about.
physical therapy.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So it's just a wonder. Maybe they're calling back to somebody at home, but you know, probably not because they're in the expanse. So I hope that they all are okay.
Did they retain the memories of their time down
Yeah,
there? It seems like it because Archer seems changed by the end a little bit, or at least feels
agreed.
connected to the species he was becoming.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. All right, so that was it for my list. I feel like I keep sighing when we talk about this one, and I think that's what I really feel about this. It's just like, oh, okay, okay. There's just
Yeah.
too much here that doesn't make sense to me,
Mm.
and there are very good moments, and we have some more coming up. But yeah, I don't like it when my decons list is longer than my pros.
Sure. But hey, your decon list led to some great conversation. At least on my
True.
part, I enjoyed what came out of that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you.
Oh, well, thank you for discussing it with me.
Mind if we take a look? Prettiest sight I ever saw.
All right, so getting it back to the positive now, it is time for our segment celebrating the artistic direction in Enterprise. We like to highlight something that was particularly beautiful in the episode or something that really stood out as a visual. So, Chris, why don't you start us off tonight? What's your view screen on?
All right, we're going back to the cold open, and I loved this little editing direction touch where we go from flamethrowers to the opening song,
Hmm.
then to Paul's candle.
Oh,
Right? I liked that just little
yeah.
bridging of the scenes. If there wasn't the song, if this was Discovery, it would fade right from the flamethrowers into the candle, right? Discovery's good at those kind of transitions. And Enterprise had that set up here well too. So good job, LeVar and the editor for setting that up. It didn't need to happen, but I appreciated it.
It's the little things, right?
Yeah.
All right, so mine is a little thing tonight too. And I want to talk a little bit about when Archer is dreaming of Urquhart. And we talked about how that CGI of the city itself does not hold up. But the
Uh-huh.
part of that dream that I really like is we see semi mutated Archer squatting down, looking at this and realizing that, you know, this is gorgeous and wonderful. And then he turns around and there is Captain Archer standing on the
Yeah.
other side of the doorway. And you see both of them. And obviously, this is camera work, and both of them were Scott Bakula at one point. But the facial acting on
Mm.
both sides of that at that moment, and then you see real Archer wake up from this dream, or well, real mutated Archer wake up, and the face acting there is the same as when it was in the dream. Like the transition is smooth and it feels jarring, exactly like
Uh,
waking up from a dream like that would. And I really liked that visual that our Archer that we're used to, Jonathan Archer, is still in there. Like he's actually there and he's trying to remind himself of that. And they don't go back to it, they don't talk about it, but
mhm.
it's just a really nice piece to see that, you know, he is still himself in there. There's two things almost, you know, having a face off inside of him. And it was just a really nice visual metaphor.
And again, it's showing that that transformation has not been complete yet.
Mm-hmm.
So interesting. Good shot, good little camera trick, and a great moment that because you get pulled into this
Yeah.
idyllic cavernous city and you see Mutant Archer just like, oh, I'm home. Like you all have
Yeah.
that feeling, and he expresses that through the prosthetic well, and then it's startling when he sees himself. So good
Mm-hmm.
pick. Good pick.
Well, thank you. So we have come to the time where we discuss our favorite parts of this episode, our Porthos pick. And I think we have danced around this, and I don't think either of us are going to be surprised by the others because we've kind of half mentioned them in the discussion, but we're going to expand a little bit more here. So, Chris, what's your Porthos pick?
I love the last speech of the episode between Archer and Phlox. Phlox wants to destroy this mutagenic pathogen. And Archer's like, we came out here to stop the Xindis destroying humanity. I'll be damned if I'm going to have a hand in destroying another race in the process. That's the Star Trek moment. So yeah, I just love that the Star Trek moment is really about, though I went through this traumatic experience, my body was violated. I didn't have autonomy over my body. The species just chose to inflict this transformation on me. Their desire to be home and to endure is something that we all can empathize with, and so he's like, I'm not going to destroy this species. We're going to keep something of them alive. And I thought that was a beautiful moment in an episode that wasn't that beautiful, but it may at least stuck the Star Trek ending in the very last moment of the episode.
Well, my dogs can bark like crazy too because this is the exact Porthos pick that I have.
Yeah.
Like, I really liked this moment. I like that we end this episode on something that I can feel good about. And I think this is that we were talking about it earlier, the connection to the Xindi. This is that larger theme that Archer was experiencing last week in Anomaly, where he did, the torture in the airlock. And now here he's realizing, that whole, can you save humanity while losing yours?
Yeah.
And he's going to wrestle with that this entire season. They all are. And this is another moment where we see that. And he makes not necessarily an opposite choice, but he makes a human choice right here. He makes an ethical, personal choice. And I think that had he not had the previous experience in Anomaly and in the last episode, maybe it wouldn't have been quite the same here. Like he's seen himself go dark and now he's trying to go a little more light. Like that's very simplistic, but it's gnawing at him. He doesn't want to lose his humanity in order to save humanity. So he cannot be the one who ends a species. And that's different to live with than, even killing someone or blowing up a ship or any of that, because it would be the end, like the actual final for real, no coming back end. And that's just, it was nice to see Archer realize that about himself. And it was nice to see Phlox react to that once he realized the why. His whole stance changed because he was like, Captain, really, we don't want to keep this. This is not good. But again, he didn't just destroy it. He asked first. And that's so Phlox too. So like, this is just that nice little moment. And we've talked about how much we like the Archer Phlox relationship. And while it was not huge in this episode, this is another moment. They're being honest and open and vulnerable with each other. They're not on the same side when they come into it, but they have an understanding of each other and then an understanding of the situation. And I like that.
Yeah, and you just made me think, like, quickly going through what I remember about Archer in this season, and damage comes to mind, and the struggle against his own humanity, because humanity can be really bad too, right?
Yeah.
It could be very human to get another flamethrower out and flamethrow that little vial, right? That would be a human response to it, not the human we prefer. But what changes the situation for Archer here, unlike maybe in later encounters, is he's literally walked in the shoes of these people.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
In the
Talk
skin.
about having empathy.
Right? So empathy is the key that creates the kind of humanity that we're striving for. He's tough, he's resolute, but he's also doesn't want to destroy just for destruction's sake. The danger's gone. Doesn't mean so we don't have to destroy this sample, because who knows? A piece of this people is existing. It makes me think about the Silver Blood people, right? Too, and Voyager. They just want to exist too. They just want to get that message out there.
Yeah.
Every time I watch that episode, I'm like, can't they just shoot it out now? Put it on an airlock. Do something.
Yeah, it's but you know what? How many episodes have we referred to here? Other episodes of Star Trek. So like maybe that's why this one needed this moment because it does feel so much like bits and pieces and chapters and ideas from other stories.
The sphere. All it wants to
Yeah.
do in its dying moment is make sure
Yep.
its memory is preserved and lives
Right.
on in some other life.
Well, the
And
inner
that's what
light.
Saru wants too. And the inner
Yeah.
light. Yes.
Yep. Well, even Masaka, they're transforming it into their environment, their place, their culture.
Yeah.
And that is the most important lesson of all of Star Trek is Masaka
Stop
is
touching
breaking.
masks.
I can't watch either of those without thinking of how much it makes the two of us laugh every time.
Yes.
And that's a good thing.
Yes.
But yeah,
yes.
I mean this is why we needed this moment. We needed something in here that made it feel like Enterprise, that made it feel
It's
not
the why.
like yeah, it's the why. And it's the focus, it's the core of this story, not just the bits and pieces from others. And that's why this really stands out. And it's a nicer note to end on too.
When we can contrast this moment of Archer's choices with other choices he makes, and what amount of empathy does he have for in those situations, and really study ourselves by watching this show, right? When we're making decisions, am I making a decision based on empathy or just on other aspects of the human condition? So I really do enjoy the end of this. Does it make it worth seeing the rest of it? We'll find out when we do our Vulcan's Verdict.
We will. We are getting close to that point because I will
Stay
tell
tuned.
you. Well, and as often is the case, I have a range that I put on my notes of where my score is going to fall because I think differently about the episodes after we talk about them, and I hope that that's what happens with the Carrot Crew too. Is that whether or not you agree with us, that we have caused you to think or think differently, think more expansively, or just laugh. And I think sometimes episodes that I don't expect to be what they are because we laugh about them or because we discuss them, it's different. So let's see if that happened tonight.
There's no 90s here, though.
There are no emergency escape pod 90s, so you have to go back to Precious Cargo if you need those.
Accessing library computer data.
Here on First Flight, you know we love trivia and behind-the-scenes tidbits. So we pick a few to share about each episode. So I'm going to start tonight. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
All right, we got our requisite absolutely in. Here we go. My first trivia is that Ensign Mayweather enjoys a brief period as ranking bridge officer on board Enterprise when all his senior officers are off the ship in the fourth act. We already pointed it out, but hey, we can point it out again because Travis gets to sit in the captain's chair and he's not nervous about it. You know, he's just there commanding the bridge.
Yep. I always want more Travis, and this is the kind of Travis I want more of. In command, ready to go, prepared, and just being awesome because he is.
Yeah. My next one is not going to shock anyone. This episode shares similar plot elements to the TNG episode Identity Crisis, where Geordi LaForge, LeVar Burton, the director of this episode, is transformed into another species in an extremely short time span. So, wow. This must have been an interesting experience for LeVar Burton because he had to, I'm going to choose my words carefully, endure an episode like this.
Uh-huh.
And unfortunately, both endure. Now, Identity Crisis, I think, has a lot more going for it than this.
Yes.
With a cool mystery plot of using the holodeck, seeing LaForge have a healthy relationship with a woman. Yeah.
Yes.
Which is good.
Well, and I have to say my own personal moment, and I may have to put this out there when this episode drops, is I have the Playmates figure of Geordi as the morphed alien. We call him Geordi as the funky alien in my house. And he likes to just randomly turn up in places, corners, on top of jewelry boxes, inside the pantry. Like he just kind of wanders around my house and is weird and funky. And so I have a special place in my heart for those blue veins. But
is an odd Star Trek Elf on the Shelf.
Yes. Oh God, I hope he's not watching me and reporting me to somebody somewhere, because well, he'd see a lot of his untransformed self around my house too. There's many Geordies in my house.
I love that.
So speaking of LeVar, though, you have another trivia about him, right?
Yes, I do. According to Trek Web, LeVar Burton, who played Geordi LaForge in Star Trek Next Generation, went to the producers and told them he was, quote, ashamed that he had directed this episode. Ooh.
Ouch.
And likewise, Brennan Braga, 10 years after this episode, said, Extinction is one of the singularly most embarrassing episodes of Star Trek I've ever been involved with. Ooh, I think
Big
there's
words.
worse. I really think there's worse.
I agree. I think that there are worse. I think this is a very low point for Enterprise, and I think that Brendan Braga, I will take that with a grain of salt, because he said a lot of things 10 years on, 15 years on, all that. With hindsight, that's different, and he has some ideas. So whatever. But LeVar Burton saying that he's ashamed,
Yeah.
like, that hurts my soul.
Yeah.
I could not imagine LeVar Burton telling me that he was ashamed or disappointed in something that, like, I was involved with. So I cannot imagine being those producers, hearing that from his mouth. Like, I would have cried right there in front of him. And I wonder if you asked him now what he would say, because he has really interesting things to say about his directing on Enterprise in particular. And I know our co-host Emerita, Melanie, actually got to tell him in person once at a convention that she loved his direction on Enterprise. And he said, thank you. People don't really mention that very often. And he did some really cool things. We've said it before. Yeah. So I feel like because he has been through episodes like this, and because he understands the prosthetics and the de-evolution or any of that, and he went through things like, Code of Honor. Yeah. It's okay to know that you could have done better and call it out. And it's hard to sit with, but I don't think he's necessarily wrong. Like, this would not be the one that I would want. Like, I think about Jim Morehouse on Trek Ranks, where he always tells people he bid to have a small part in Enterprise, which we'll get to next season. And he always tells people, I was so lucky that I got the episode I did, because it could have been precious cargo, and that's true. Like, if someone asks me to direct Trek, I'm gonna be like, yep, thanks, no matter what it is. But you hope it's something that you can be really proud of. And maybe he's just not as proud of this as he is with some of his other work, and that's a bummer.
Yeah, and bummer, because there is a good story here. There's a really interesting sci-fi premise with a species that wants to live on. It makes me think about the Asgard in Stargate SG-1, where they can't reproduce anymore. And they're using genetics to try and extend their lives and all that kind of stuff. So there's good stuff here, but so much of the episode was just on, like, the journey to the city and fighting for bug plant fruit and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean, look, like you just said, if you are asked to be any part of Star Trek and you get in, there should be pride, right? I have one story in the 2016 Strange New Worlds anthology. That was the last anthology. It didn't even get into print. It's only in ebook form. But I'm like, all right, so a little part of Star Trek, I got in a little tiny bit, right? Yeah. Not canon or anything, but a little tiny bit. So, LeVar, be proud. And I'm sure at this point of his life, looking back, overall, he's very proud of being part of Star Trek. Agreed.
All right, well, let me bring it back to some positive trivia here. And again, this is like the longest preview for our Vulcans Verdict ever. But I'm going to talk ships for a minute, because I want to talk about another missed opportunity, but something that I think is cool, because, again, thank you, Internet, we can see it. John Eves, who was a designer, notes that in his blog, an earlier version of this episode's script called for a new Vulcan shuttle design, but it was written out by the time it was filmed. But he has posts of the sketches of the unseen shuttle on his website, and it's really cool. So if you want to go see a never seen on screen but really awesome semi-canon, or was supposed to be canon, Vulcan shuttle design, it's worth it to go look that up. And the ship on the surface that they see is the pod from the future was used in future tense from season 2 with just a couple changes to the front section. So
I thought so.
If you felt the need to talk about a stegosaurus, that was why.
The stegosaurus is a herbivore.
It's an herbivore. How many times have we had this conversation? Literally us.
Not enough. Not enough.
Stegosaurus is actually my favorite dinosaur, so look at that.
I'm an Ankylosaurus kind of fan.
I agree that one is also a great one. Diplodocus
Cool.
is also kind of fun.
Well, that's fun to say. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Pachylocephalosaurus is the best one to say, I think.
Dang.
I was a dinosaur nerd. I was a dinosaur nerd when I was in elementary school.
Okay, so one time Boimler dragged me to the Starship History Museum.
Dragged? You ran up to the doors.
No, I didn't. It was boring. I hated it. Anyway, so they had the NX-01 there, Archer's Enterprise.
Yeah, classic design. Plus it had, the grapplers.
Skip that part. They don't care.
I love grapplers.
See?
Now we have to do it. It's come to the time for our final thoughts, our grappler ratings. How are we going to take all this and put it into a number? So, Chris, I'm so glad you're going first.
Do we have to do it? We could just skip it this time, right?
No, we'll throw
Cue
our
the music,
stuff
Chris.
later.
Moment of melody now.
The most profound discoveries are not necessarily beyond that next star. They're within us.
Tempting. But nope, we're going to go on record. And I mean, who's holding our feet to the flames about any of this? Nobody. It's ours. And if we don't like what we do at the end of the season, we'll redo it, right?
Commander Tret will hold our feet to the flames.
Okay, that's true. He'll just flame our feet. All right. We're
I'm
stalling
delaying
again. So on a scale of 1 to 10 grapplers, half grapplers, possible, how do you rate the episode?
Ooh, well, my rating has changed since we started. It has gone up.
Okay.
It was a 3. Now it's a 4. Like I said, there are really rich ideas within the premise that were not, did not make it through the process of making the episode, right? It wasn't revealed. It's still pretty, buried beneath some junk that just doesn't work. It's not very entertaining. And, we, like you said earlier in one of your pros, that everyone had something to do. That is technically true, but we weren't watching Jonathan Archer, Hoshi Sato, and Malcolm Reed this episode, right? For most of it, we were watching different characters. So that's why I always have trouble with like the possession episodes or the transformation episodes, because that's not the character I signed up to watch. And I didn't learn anything about those characters. The only benefit is Archer's empathy in the end, making him, save that fragment of the species. So we were able to find some good stuff to talk about, but the episode on its own, what it had to say on its own, is a 4 out of 10 for me. And what say you, my friend?
Well, okay, so when people ask me what's your favorite and least favorite episodes of Enterprise, this one is often one that I say is my very least favorite. Like, I have been dreading rewatching this one 4 times. I've been dreading having to talk about it and find positives. But you know what? This discussion was good today. And so I agree. I came in lower, and it's up a little. And I think a lot because of how we have connected it to the now. And we've talked about it being post-COVID. We've talked about it, being post 9/11. We've talked about it looking back. And that has given me richer layers. But again, like you said, when this came out, it wasn't trying to say any of that. And what it said was, I wish that this had been either part 1 of 2, or like they had mutated and then fixed it, and then Archer had done more with I gotta save this species, and had more of an ethical thing. Like, I don't like this one. And I can find positives, and there are, but I still don't really like this one, and I gave it the fair shot. We talked about this before we recorded. I watched it the full 4 times. I don't have to. That's my rules. That's my self-imposed podcast prep. But I wanted to give it a fair shot, like I do everything else, because I always want to find more in the episodes I don't care for. But I didn't come away thinking that this wouldn't be one that I would have a problem saying is my least favorite of the series. And that's hard, because I do like that last bit, and I love seeing everyone on the ship, but I think this one comes out as a 4 for me too. Like I just can't. It's just, I don't want to watch this one again. I probably won't for a while, unless till we get to end of season prep, probably. And maybe it'll be one that I end up skipping, because it leaves me with an icky feeling, even though that last bit is very human and positive. And that's not really what I want from my Star Trek. It's not a good uncomfortable, it's just icky.
Yeah.
So,
you know what would have made this episode so much better? If they were transforming into the Xindi avians, but they didn't know that, and then they have this file, which at the end allows the Xindi to become whole, right?
Yeah.
And they can rebuild that other species. That would be cool. Then it would be connected to everything. But like you said, as it is, there's no connection to this episode. The only thing that I found valuable was Archer's empathy, his lesson in empathy, and how it can help us, gauge our decision making. Are we making decisions from a place of empathy or not?
Mm-hmm. And that's how I feel about this episode. Like, we just heaved this big sigh. Like it felt good to talk about it, because it's been sitting there and niggling at me. So I'm very glad that we had the chat about it. But again, I'm done with this one for a bit.
Yep.
But let's finish up with some positives, because you know what? There really were some good things in here. So run us through a quick recap of your pros.
All right. Number 1, Trip, Travis, and Phlox. They're awesome on the ship, working together. Number 2, I love the beam down rescue in the EV suits. That was a cool action beat. And then I really appreciate Commander Tret. He's resolute but reasonable, and has a good window for us to look at a society stuck trying to survive within a pandemic. And so I think we can connect with that. Also, Roger Cross, the actor, Curtis Manning from 24, he's pretty great. And then my view screen on is, and I know our friend Melanie loves 24, so that was for you, all this 24 talk. My view screen on is the transition from the flamethrower to the Paul's candle. And then my Porthos pick is Archer's final speech about the people and the virus, that he will not be destroying an entire race.
That's a good list from a challenging episode.
Yeah. Now, okay, let's hear your list, although it's similar.
Yep, it is similar. My first one was how everybody got a little bit of a part, but really calling out the crew that's back on the ship and how amazing and well they work together. My second one, I'm just going to say peaches and ears, and we'll leave it at that. And my third is, again, Tret with his character and with his outfit and alien design, which I really liked. And then my view screen on was Archer seeing Archer in the dream sequence. Yeah. And my Porthos was the same as you. That last little bit about, we're not destroying this species, just keep it on ice.
Yes.
Do you have your communicator? The people of Suliban we're working for came from about 300 years ago. They couldn't travel through time, but they did develop a way to send back images of themselves, to communicate through time.
You wanted a chance to communicate? I suggest you begin.
As always, we want to remind you that we adore getting feedback and thoughts from listeners, as we hope you could tell from our last mailbag episode. We had so much fun sharing and discussing your insights and ideas, and as we always do on social media too. And as we learned from this episode, even a subpar episode like Extinction can be made better through conversation. So we are collecting your thoughts on this episode and all other episodes in season 3 for our next mailbag episode. So this is your call for any grappler ratings, Porthos picks, Viewscreen On picks, flipping Duras's, Vulcan as a mother, or general comments. Just get them to us using that hashtag Carrot Crew.
Yes, please do reach out to us. We love the interaction. We love you answering questions we pose and making us think and having more conversations. So share your thoughts, your smiles. You can reach us at First Flight Pod on Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram, and Facebook. We're also on YouTube under the Tricorder Transmissions Network. And we'd love to hear your voices. You might have heard that on some previous episodes. You can email us audio files at firstflightpod@gmail.com. We take them. If you've got something to say about an episode that's coming up or something that you want us to throw in the mailbag, we would love to hear that. We want your Durases, we want your VAMFs, we want all of that. So the best place to reach me personally is at Abby M. Summer. That's SOMMER on Twitter and Blue Sky. And I'm really trying, guys. I say it every episode. I promise. I've been interacting with a few people there the past couple of days, so I'm proud of myself. Yeah. So, Chris, where's the best place to reach you?
Well, until it's extinct, I'll be on X as Shelf Nerds. And
nice.
Then no, terrible. And then the Blue Sky as well, and but mostly on X. And you can also find my work on my YouTube channel, Completing the Shelf.
Thank you so much for joining us. It is always a good time talking Trek with you, Chris. And like I said, I feel like this was a bit of a catharsis about this episode for me.
Yes.
And we want to thank you, Carrot Crew, for spending this time with us. We will be back next time with Regine, the 4th episode of Season 3. And for those of you who are also Discovery fans, we literally just watched Whistle Speak, the 6th episode of Season 5, like hours before we recorded this. So we're adding a special little button, maybe a longer button, after the pod with our brief immediate reactions. Listen if you so desire. I think there's a lot of button in this one, so listen to what you want, don't if you don't want to, but I think it's going to be a lot of fun because I have so much to say. So now, as always, we leave you with this quote from Captain Jonathan Archer and your moment of melody.
The most profound discoveries are not necessarily beyond that next star. They're within us, woven into the threads that bind us, all of us, to each other.
All right. Okay. So we almost got denobulans and denobula. Like I
thought we were.
Like, holy crap, are we going to denobula? And then I was about, oh, we're not going to denobula. And I kind of feel like, holy crap, are we going to Beta Z next week? But I'm not sure we're actually going to go to Beta Z either. But like, it was so fun. And I love that we know there were devastating storms on denobula now. Like, I like every bit of denobulan lore in there. That's amazing.
I have to say, Season 5 is the most Berman era Star Trek feeling of Discovery.
Yes.
People are sitting around thinking their way through solutions, logicking puzzles, right?
Yep.
But then there's also this more adventurous action element. They're in force more. They're running around outside a lot more, which is really cool.
Mm-hmm.
It's something Star Trek doesn't do a lot, or if they do it, like in Extinction, you can really tell it's not really outside.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, yeah, I liked this episode a lot. Right before I watched it, Caleb said that I'm going to be writing essays about it, just knowing me. And I assume he was referring to like that I'm religious, and on some of my YouTube channel video essays, I do bring in a Christian reading of certain episodes. So there's definitely some of that content here in Whistle Speak. I need to watch it more, and like really think about what they said. But yeah, it was definitely lots to consider. There's ideas in the episode, and that's when we're winning.
Yes. And I think that there's been lots of things in here that have been slowly set up, like everything with Hugh's abuela.
Yes.
Oh my God. Like my heart was so full, and Wilson Cruz deserves every accolade for this season, because his arc with Culber and like the emotionality, and his face acting too. Like just the gentleness you see when he's looking at the hologram of her, and then how his face changes when he's with people he loves. He does the same thing when he's with Paul later on. And then he has that openness with Book, but it's just that little subtlety. And man, I would watch an entire show of Culber and Book discussing philosophy. Like an entire show. And how powerful to see two, not middle-aged, but older men of color discussing emotions and spirituality in a mutually respectful way. I loved it. Like, that was just so beautiful.
One of the better scenes. It's the Star Trek moment in the episode, I think.
Yeah, well, because Book says in there, and this is not the exact thing, but it's a human quirk, thinking that something is less meaningful if it's just for you or just yours or something like that. Yeah. That I'm going to think about for a long time. Like, that is powerful to me, because I feel like a lot of times being a teacher, being a mom of young kids, like all this, I don't necessarily take all the time for me or recognize that it's okay if something is just for me, and that's a lesson I need. So I really appreciated hearing that.
It's really interesting what Discovery is doing and has done with faith, and really a lot of Star Trek, even Picard early in Next Generation, like they just admit we don't know.
Yeah.
And we're cool with that. We're open with that.
Well, and this gave me parallels to Who Watches the Watchers, and how the Prime Directive and having to break it in order to save somebody, and that was just, it was really interesting to see that, and to see how things have grown and changed from the 90s when that was on to now, but then also they're in totally different places in the timeline for Star Trek, and how that has both shifted and stayed the same. Like, this one I think is going to be dissected a lot.
Yeah, but like Michael was in a very similar situation in New Eden with Captain Pike. He made a different decision than her.
Yeah.
Right? He was going to allow himself to die. Michael couldn't let Tilly die for no reason, right? For a false faith type of situation. So yeah, it was interesting. Is the Prime Directive as applicable if their society was already interfered with? And really all these people would have been dead centuries ago anyway.
Yeah,
if this thing wasn't there, right? So it's really interesting. There's a lot to think about. I've only seen it once. I'm gonna watch it many more times because I'll be talking about it with Thad and Chrissy. But
I can't wait for that.
Me too. It was a really strong episode, like episodic Star Trek.
Yes.
Yet it's still connected. And I think that's the brilliance of this season. There's not a giant dire threat, but every episode adds a little bit to it. And also
they put the piece of the puzzle in at the end of every episode. Like, legit, that's the shot.
but more than that, because that could be empty, like just plot.
Yes.
More than that, though, Michael's like, what were we supposed to learn from this episode or from this experience? Until he's like, to respect the power of technology.
Yeah.
Like, wow, like they're doing it for us. That's classic Star Trek.
Yeah.
And I think that was one of the issues people had with early Discovery. They didn't say the message enough. Like, it wasn't as clear. There was a lot going on, but it was throughout multiple episodes. Whereas now we're getting episodes that have their clear, intellectual content of its own lesson about the human condition, along with the larger plot too. So I think it's unfortunate it's their last season because they're really found a great balance.
Yeah, they have. Okay, I got a couple other little things.
Sorry, go ahead.
No. The ocular, tricorder. How cool is that?
I'm on board.
Their eye just goes a little bit. So am I. Like, wearable tech is absolutely. I mean, we see them with doing everything from their badges, but yes. I mean, I'm sure. If it was real, maybe the contact would hurt or whatever it ends up being, and maybe you don't want to chip in your head, but that was such a cool idea, and I'm totally in for that. And did you notice that was it Rava? Okay, Rava, I thought. Did you notice that Rava was referred to by they them pronouns the whole time?
I did.
I think that's so cool because it was just thrown in there like it was no big deal and everybody just did it. And I'm like, you know what? That is the kind of normalization that is so powerful because it wasn't a big deal. It was just there. And that is so nice to see. It makes me very happy. Thank you, Discovery.
Well, and they set it up too when she was really nerding out on language like a Hoshi Sato fan. She talked about that, they recognize 3 genders. So yeah, I like, they did this was well written and structured, basically. For sure. So. And
smart. And I like we get Michael and Tilly together. I love their dynamic. I love their friendship. I love Tilly constantly jogging. An object in motion stays in motion. An object in motion. This is like when they jogged back in season 1 and she had to ask for the burrito with salsa. Like it's such, the parallels here are deliberate and beautiful and just nice. I like 2 smart women having a good friendship and solving this problem and watching Tilly be the teacher.
Yeah.
And watching the interactions there and calling Rafa a little, which sorry, you'll have to bleep that with something, but that was so perfect because as a teacher, you've thought that so many times and you don't say it out loud, but she did. And that just resonated with me. And I like seeing Tilly grow into that role. And wow, I really hope that with Academy, Mary Wiseman keeps saying, I can't talk about it because she is in it. Because I want more teacher Tilly. Like, I really, really do.
Me too. That'd be very good.
I missed her in season 4 in that chunk that she wasn't in, and I'm so glad she's back. And she has really cool eyeliner this season. Not this episode when they're pretty much makeup free, but she's got that wingtip sparkly eyeliner, which is so cool.
Still not a fan of her hair. Looks very hot, and especially when they're all thirsty.
Well,
but I loved, and I know you will too, the little detail of, all right, this technology, this weather technology was from the 24th century, right? Therefore, it runs off of isolinear chips.
I know.
They got it all right there. Perfect.
It is perfect. Yeah. It is perfect. And I love when, you can tell that this was made by people who love Star Trek and who love Discovery. Because it's all of these references to the bigger series and to the bigger franchise and to the series itself, and they're woven in so beautifully and subtly this season. It's really nice.
And I think you probably saw me tweet this, but this felt like a great episode of Stargate SG-1 too. Like they're running around the forest. There's people with faith. Their faith is lied to them, and our heroes have to come in. And there's all that stuff. There's good action. It's shot in Canada. Now, Stargate's shot in the forests of Vancouver. This is the forests of Toronto. But there's good connection there for me, just as a Stargate fan. It felt very Stargate. Although the Stargate people wouldn't care about Prime Directive stuff. They're like, here, we're going to tell you your gods are false.
Yeah, well, it's a different way to go about things, different strategy.
Yeah. So anyway, it was a good episode.
Yeah.
Right now, out of 10 whistles, how many whistles would you give it?
Okay.
We've only seen it once.
I did have to say I was kind of bummed that they didn't actually whistle speak to open up like a door or a panel or something. Like I really wanted that to be a final answer, but I get that. And that is not against it. But I would say maybe probably an 8. I really liked this one.
That's where I was landing.
On it. Yeah.
Same. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a good one. And I think the connections that are coming from this one are going to have bigger implications later down the line. So that's one of the, and maybe I'm wrong. I mean, but everything seems so deliberate. And this seems to be setting up a lot of things that I hope come to fruition. But again, where's my Saru? I can't have a perfect episode of Discovery if I don't have my Saru.
1000%. I will say though, I will be disappointed if nothing comes more from Culber's spiritual awakening, whatever that is, whatever that means. Hopefully there's more exploration, because that was something I was really disappointed about not getting with Pike, because it seemed like they were setting that up in season 2 and then it just didn't go anywhere. So hopefully we go somewhere and it lands the ship. The ship is landing. The starship is landing.
God, that was the worst marketing. I hope that the fact that he, sent that message to Dr. Pollard and they're working on some sort of like therapeutic technique, maybe that's going to come, and maybe it's cool. Going to connect back to Kwejian and like Book being willing to, I don't know. I hope this keeps going too, because I really do like it. And like I said, Wilson Cruz is just incredible. Incredible as a person, incredible as an actor. I will just take more of him, please.
Yeah, me too. Oh, and would we get holographic Tilly's mom?
Yeah. Oh, from this technique? That could be good, and that would definitely be cathartic.
For sure.
I would love her to answer it with like a double espresso in her hand. Like turn the holo on and be like, "Yeah, mom, caffeine, a lot of it."
Or is this a way to bring back Sarek, Amanda, and Spock near the end for Michael?
That would be incredible.
Right? Yeah. Oh, okay. And Serana.
Yeah. Oh, that would make me so happy. Oh. Okay. Now we have sent like 5 story ideas out into the universe. We've got a lot to manifest.
Yes. I am not looking forward to next episode either. Regime.
It is not as bad as this one. It's not great, but it's not as bad as this one.
I remembered this one. Like I rewatched the 3rd season a year or so ago. I remembered this one more. I don't remember anything about this one besides the blonde lady.
Oh, well, in her stupid costume.
But I'll take your word for it. She have dots on the side of her forehead? Is that what her alien thing is?
Yeah, Daddy
like bumps or something?
Yeah, she looks kind of like from Ex Post Facto, the feather people, except not feathers.
Okay.
It's all right.
When I watched Necessary Evil last night, the woman in that episode reminds me of Ex Post Facto too, without feathers.
Yeah,
that's a good episode.
I like that episode a lot.
The last scene is just brutal. It's like, will you ever trust me again? And he says nothing.
Yeah, I know.
Kira and Odo. But that's kind of the beginning, because she's like, what you think about me really matters to me.
Yeah.
Right. You can see that's going to go somewhere because there's some chemistry there. Not romance, but just chemistry between the actors.
Absolutely. And it's so multi-layered. That relationship is, no matter if you like the romance or not, is powerful and intimate and deep in many, many ways, and set up that way from the beginning, which is really nice.
But I have to say, when I started the episode last night while washing dishes, I was like, oh, Robin McNeil's going to be like, another murder mystery. Film noir.
Well, possibly. Yep. Interesting the themes you see when you look back, for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Man, chai in the lungs.
Spicy.
It is spicy. A little bit of those cloves right there. I can smell it in my sinuses. That's okay though. Clearing everything out. All right.
Spicy reptilians.
When we get more into them, I am 100% using that all the time, because that's one of my favorite Okada lines. I love that they call him a man chop and he calls the Xindi spicy. It's 2 beautiful moments in it. Okay. Anyways. All right. So, Porthos soundbite. sounded sad.
Well, he's still healing from being cut in half.
Cut in half. All right, that might be one of our season 3 running gags, is the fact that we're gonna cut
It can't. It's so bad.
So dark.
Yeah, it's so bad.
All right. My issue with Nemesis is, one, I have a hard time with Chakotay in general because of what they did and didn't do with the character, and I have a hard time separating that man from the art sometimes. And I know that that's a. I mean, there's other Trek actors I feel the same way, you know, like, and that's okay. But that episode it leaves me wanting more and wanting less, and I have a hard time when Neelix is really agitated, upset. Like, that gets me, because he is usually so bubbly and open, and in this one he's so opposite. And it's not just, you know, trauma or he's hurting. It's like a whole different thing, and it creeps me out in a way I don't enjoy. And I know that's part of the point, but I don't want to watch it a lot, because I don't like seeing Neelix in that, like, completely panicked, no bit of himself in there.
Wait
and him in particular.
Neelix? What's Neelix doing this episode? I can't recall in Nemesis.
Oh, wait.
Are you thinking about Memorial?
I'm thinking about Memorial. Yes, sorry. Yes.
They are reminiscent, though.
Yes. Wrong one. I do that with Silent Enemy. Well, it was Silent Enemy and Sleeping Dogs, but there's a couple of episodes in every series I flip the titles in my head for some reason.
Yeah.
Anyways, I don't like Nemesis that much either. Like, Chakotay, I have a hard time with him. My favorite thing about Chakotay is that a giant stand-up of him lives in Thad's bathroom. Like, that is possibly my favorite thing that tells you to wash your hands.
Yes, my favorite Chakotay is the Chakotay that challenges Janeway.
Yeah,
and Counselor Chakotay, because there's times when he's a good counselor. Like, he's just... Now, sometimes it brings them to a spirit quest or whatever, and I just swallow it and accept, and, like, it is what it is. The actor is who he is, but Chakotay in Voyager in the 24th century in the Delta Quadrant on that ship is an interesting character, but kind of bland. But is he bland like Malcolm is bland? And that's the character, right? Chakotay, if he didn't get in the Maquis, he would just be this quiet guy that does anthropology. Like, you know what I mean?
I guess he had so many more layers and so much more potential in the beginning that I don't, and maybe Prodigy is going to help with that. Like, when he's out on his own, and who knows? But I feel like I wanted more from him than all the time. And that's funny, because I also say I don't enjoy him, but I just watched Shattered after Face the Strange, and that could be my favorite Chakotay episode. Like, I really like him in that one. He's doing stuff, he's smart, he's interacting with lots of different people. There was just a lot of missed relationships there. I miss him and B'Elanna the way they used to be tight at the beginning of the show, and I know that's because, you know, she's getting married to Tom, and, like, it's different, but I miss that relationship. I wish it would have expanded and popped up more than it did.
It went into season 4, and then it definitely did kind of sputter out. Yeah, Chakotay.
Hey, but our kids know Chakotay now, which is cool.
They do. And the first time I heard my daughter say the name Chakotay out loud, I'm like, what universe am I living in? This I couldn't have imagined.
Okay, I have one that's... Yeah, go ahead.
No, like, next, like, when she starts talking about the Doctor, when season 2 of Prodigy comes out, oh man.
I realized the other day how much, like, I have infused Star Trek into my kids in a completely different way. And this is, at some point, I'm going to take a picture of this and post it to the broader world. But so my older daughter got her braces off last Thursday, which was amazing because it's been over a year, right? But she has one of the teeth that had a bracket on it is loose now, and they couldn't get the bracket off without pulling the tooth, and it's like a little too soon for the tooth to come out. So she has one tooth with a bracket left on it. She's calling it, and I had nothing to do with this. She goes, "Oh, that's my Borg tooth." I'm like, "Excuse me, what?" She goes, "Well, it's got technology that's just stuck to it, and it's kind of grayish black. It's my Borg tooth." And I'm like, "Oh my god, that's the best thing I've ever heard." And I just asked her, I'm like, "When this falls out, can I take a picture of it?" She's like, "That's weird." I'm like, "It is, but it also makes me stupidly happy. So I'm gonna take a picture of her Borg tooth when it falls out."
I like Borg tooth. That's funny.
I do too. It was so funny. And then she told it to my dad one day when he was over, and she's like, "Yeah, all my braces are off except for my Borg tooth." And he gives me this look, and I'm like, "I love it. I don't know what to tell you. I've infused them." I, of course, always have to watch Generations at Christmas time because that is 100% a Christmas movie.
Absolutely. Yes. And so is Death Wish.
Yes. And so is Spock Amok because Lon mentions Christmas. You mentioned Christmas, we got it. I mean, I guess then kind of 11:59 would be a New Year's Eve one, right?
Yeah. I mean, any excuse to watch Star Trek, sure.
Exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Hey, and if anyone can do a Christmas episode, it could be Strange New Worlds.
Or Lower Decks.
Or Lower Decks, yeah. Oh my god, Lower Decks doing a holiday special movie.
Yeah.
Like ripping on the old Star Wars holiday special, but making it like Star Trek Lower Decks. That would be amazing.
Oh.
Mike McMahon, feel my vibes.
Instead of Ewoks, it'll be exocomps.
Yes.
And Jim will roll. Just no. No, but then they can redeem the exocomps and have Peanut Hamper being the exile. That's why they joined Starfleet, because the other ones couldn't stand Peanut Hamper.
Yeah. See,
and their names are Bob and Joe and
and Fred.
Yes.
Okay.
Extinction.
All right. Yes, we are really avoiding this. And I'm reveling in the fact that the rest of my day is going to be like emissions testing and calling all the doctors and appointments that only have time for you to sit on hold for like 45 minutes during the workday. And cleaning closets. That's my other job today. Ooh. Well, if I do it when the girls aren't here, I can donate things that they really don't even remember they have. But if they see them, they're going to freak out. So I'm doing it today.
Oh, that episode of Bluey was so good. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome, wasn't it?
This part of the episode is Bluey babbling. Bluey!
We've been dying to see it because it's so silly that you can't watch it here on Disney Plus.
Yeah.
What is controversial about that? I mean, okay. I know what the conservatives are saying. But...
No, but Disney's not conservative, so that's not... Because my wife said the same thing. I'm like, nope, that's not it, because Disney is not conservative. The issue, I think, is when Bandit is having the baby and Lucky's dad is the midwife, which is so funny.
I think it's hilarious. Poor Lucky's dad. That guy gets the short end of the neighbor stick all the time living by them.
But
he's a good sport.
I think the point is when Wendy is seeing from her point of view and Lucky's dad is pulling at between Bandit's legs, I think that would be it, maybe. If anything, right?
I don't know.
Because it can't be that pregnancy thing.
I wouldn't think. But you know what? There's also... I watched a video with the girls the other night about how every time that Bandit gets kicked in a sensitive male area... Disney has cut that too. Like there's two other episodes where like he's supposed to be one when they're on a swing and he gets hit. I think the end of the one with the water slide where he slides off.
That was in it.
Was it still in that one?
Yeah.
Okay,
I just watched it the other day.
The one with the swing kick isn't. That I don't know. I don't understand the decisions on this, but it doesn't matter because I love the fact that the official Bluey account just was like, forget this. We're just doing an end run around you.
Heck yeah.
Everybody have at it.
I was laughing out loud. It was so good because I wore that thing for my
That's
my
funny.
kids.
Well, when he couldn't pick the stuff up off the floor, I was dying. And Ellie's looking at me going, what? And I'm like, Ellie, I couldn't pick up anything. I couldn't tie my own shoes. I couldn't get the laundry out of our top-loading laundry because I couldn't get close enough. I had to move my steering wheel out from the car, or my seat back from the steering wheel, because I'm like, this is real. This is real.
I just loved watching Chili roll up the magazine.
I know.
Because you knew that was coming.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because Bandit can't help himself, and I would be Bandit too. In that moment, that would be me. Just for the laugh,
yeah,
I would do it.
You missed a spot, Bluey.
Oh, do I have to get every bit?
If you're gonna do something, do it properly.
Okay. Mom, what's this?
Oh, that's your old papoose.
Papoose?
We used to walk you around the park in it instead of sleeping. Straps go around here, and baby goes in here.
Get in it, Bingo. Okay.
Hey! Oh, hang on. You're not a baby. Oh, ow.
Look, Dad has a baby in his belly. I know what we can play.
Oh, no, don't say it.
This isn't gonna end well.
Okay, you're pregnant with baby Bingo. So you have to act pregnant.
Okay, if we're gonna do this, let's do it properly. How to act pregnant.
I'm just gonna get this ready.
Oh, my back. Oh, my feet. Rub my feet, Bluey. Rub my feet.
Bandit healer.
I'm hungry. Oh, I need to sit down. Oh, where's my vitamin E cream? Something about stretch marks. Ow!
Ow! Dad!
You How could you? Ow! I'm a child.
I think it's interesting because you know what? That is something that everybody has wondered. Unless you have been pregnant, you have wondered about it. I mean, I wondered before I was pregnant with my girls. Like, you don't understand it and you want to. And it's,
I don't want to. Being an observer was enough. It's an amazing, I mean, literally, like when my wife was first pregnant, I would share little bits in my classes and I'm like, girls, you guys are amazing superheroes. You can grow organs for particular purposes, and then they go away, and then you can create food and life. So, that's pretty amazing.
Well, and you don't have to think about it, which is what always killed me. Like, I was, I would watch my little app and be like, oh, look, my baby's pancreas is developing this week. I'm not thinking about pancreases. It's just happening. And it's just amazing.
Yeah. Genetic code. It's pretty powerful.
All right, well, that's a nice lead into this genetic code, right?
Actually, it is perfect. Oh my gosh, it's like almost need to keep that all in the beginning, but we won't.
We'll put it in at the end and be like, we should have said this at the beginning. We'll come back to it.